Top 5 head coaches looking to reboot. Maybe their reboot. One of them is a bit of an outlier here, but given his situation, it's the number one guy. We'll get to him. He needs a reboot, but his is a little different. He already had maybe like a pre-reboot. But the rest of these guys, I think, are trying to reboot themselves and try to reestablish after it didn't go well at other places. Number 5, even though he left of his own volition, Scott Satterfield at Cincinnati absolutely needs a reboot. Even though it ended like they closed the season well at Louisville, there was no one in that city that wanted him to stay. Like when he up and left to go to Cincinnati, most times you hear fan base like, how could you do this to us? And most of the Louisville fan base was like, why, thank you. Please enjoy your trips to Cincinnati. I've heard great things about their chili and airport. So, like, that was just on the way there. And he needs to, I think, maybe reestablish some credibility because as soon as he was at Louisville, he was looking at other jobs, including Auburn. So he needs to be at Cincinnati and invest himself in Cincinnati.
Yeah, I mean, it was a very interesting scenario there with, just basically the way the schedule worked out and that bowl game and then, him moving on over. But, yeah, I mean, Louisville fans were tired of what they had seen, it seemed like, and they were as welcoming to a change as possible. So, yeah, it worked out well for both parties, and Cincy in a bit of a lurch because Luke Fickell's now suddenly gone, is able to get a guy who's a pretty good football coach. So, yeah, it's a interesting kind of trade how that occurred, but I'm excited to see what he does for Cincinnati, who, quite frankly is, coming to the Big 12 and not with really a whole lot of momentum based on just how everything kind of unfolded there at the end and obviously Fickell being the biggest part of that. So he's got a tough task on hand introducing them to this new league. I don't think they're necessarily destined for a rocky start, but they very well could be in for one. I mean, I don't know. I don't know what to think of them just yet. With a full off season to go, but that was an interesting sequence of events.
Yeah, absolutely. Number 4, Kevin Wilson at Tulsa. He was the head coach at Indiana, and then he was the offensive coordinator at Ohio State. He had like a nice start at Indiana, and then it tailed off. And so he wound up leaving there, and then he bounced around a little bit, but wound up at Ohio State, was the offensive coordinator there. Now on his way to Tulsa. He's someone who, again, maybe he winds up at Tulsa for a long time, but Tulsa is either a stepping stone job for other people, or it's one, like unfortunately Philip Montgomery had, where he got them to some pretty good heights, but ultimately, it was just time for him to move on there. But Kevin Wilson's the next guy to try to reboot his career at Tulsa.
Yeah, Philip Montgomery, though, when he seemed like he had some early success, and then after that it was a struggle, almost annually a struggle, very similar to Seth Luttrell. Even though they were having some success in getting to bowl games, it always seemed like it was a struggle to get there. I don't know much about Kevin. I know he was, like you said, at Indiana and where he's been, Oklahoma, et cetera, but I don't know much about what he's expected to do at Tulsa. But they didn't hire him just to they're trying to be more relevant and be more consistent. We'll see if he gets it done.
Picture on the right, he looks like Frank Costanza from Seinfeld.
Yeah, a little bit,
The Festivus for the rest of us.
Yeah, I mean, he's a good assistant coach. As far as a head coach goes, I don't really know what to expect, and it's not like Tulsa really, sets off a lot of sirens in terms of, let's talk Tulsa football. I mean, they've kind of just been there. All due respect to Philip Montgomery, they've had some good moments, had some good players roll through there, but they're just kind of middle of the road, and like they'll make a bowl game and finish 6 and 7, or they're just kind of there to me. And at least at first when he got there was like some spike and some energy, and I think what ended up happening was they just sort of just flatlined. It was there wasn't any spikes anymore. It was just kind of like a slight bump from year to year, or a slight dip. It wasn't though. Boom, we've suddenly won 10 games, and now we're on to, winning the American. But, he did a good job there. I don't know what their expectations are. I think it's just basically they found themselves just doing the same thing year after year, and they just needed to, change the sheets and shake things up a little bit. So Kevin Wilson should do that. I mean, he's 61 years old, so it's not like he's in this, you would think, for the long haul, the super long haul. But, I'm sure he'll get, a nice bit of rope because Philip Montgomery surely did. And so I'm sure that, he'll have time to kind of sink his teeth and claws into this program, and I think that Philip Montgomery certainly left it better than he found it. So this should be a nice little spot for a very seasoned guy like Kevin Wilson with a exciting offense to be able to come in and do his thing.
Yeah. Number 3, Barry Odom at UNLV was at Mizzou and had some success there, and then it just tailed off. I think Mizzou fans, and maybe rightfully so, thought he was kind of riding the wave off of Gary Pinkel, who'd been there for a long time and won, and he took over after Gary Pinkel retired. But UNLV is an interesting spot. They feel like a team, that is trying to watch from the outside, and they would make sense to me for Pac-12 expansion for sure. And so you want to make good hires if you're UNLV over the next couple of years, because you're in an emerging, gigantic media market that has a lot of great things going on for it economically. And if your school can be good at football and men's basketball, even if it can't, you could always be one of the schools that just fits in because of the market size. But it would certainly behoove them in these times to do well. And Barry Odom trying to be the guy who maybe gets them there.
Yeah, I'm tired of hearing about UNLV though, and just the city. That's the only thing we hear about it. The reason it's even talked about is because it's in Las Vegas and there's all this potential. But I don't see them really. And maybe I'm just not reading the Las Vegas newspaper often enough to know kind of what they have in store and facilities wise and all of that. But yeah, it's a program that has a lot of potential. But I don't know how well aware most of us are on what exactly direction they're taking as far as that goes. But, guy with obviously a really, nice background, experience in, the most major conference of them all here recently. And so to find himself at UNLV obviously wasn't the plan, but he's got a lot of skins on the wall, and that is a thriving metropolis, like you said, that there's some opportunity there, but I just don't know how much anticipation or expectation there is there. I don't know what the mindset is. I don't know, if they've even kicked the tires at all in the Pac-12. I don't know if they're anywhere close to even being a team that the Pac-12 would want to bring in. You got to give me more than, it's in Las Vegas. Great. And, what else is there? So, yeah, a lot of good recruits out there in that area and on the West Coast. And so I think he should do well there. And then that is one job that if you do it right and you have the right support, that's the most important thing. Is like I've said a couple times now, I don't know what level of support there is, but if he's got the proper support, he's a good football coach, and that's a diamond in the rough type of program for sure.
Yeah. Number 2, Tom Herman at FAU. Did not go as everyone thought it would go at Texas. There was this thought when he got hired that there was a bidding war between Texas and LSU. LSU stuck with Ed Orgeron, and it worked out great for them in the short term as they won a national title. It didn't even come close to happening at Texas under Tom Herman, and he's a very brilliant coach when it comes to coaching, but I do think that the reason that Tom Herman isn't at Texas is not just the pressures of Texas in the outside world. It's a lot on Tom Herman in that he let his personality get in the way of that program growing. So I hope for his sake he's learned a little bit and adjusted. And FAU's been kind of a reboot school for several coaches. So we'll see how it goes there. There's lots of talent that you can kind of just fall into there, especially maybe guys who need to get down to the group of 5 that are from Florida and want to come home. You can probably have a pretty good team and contend for the conference title if you do it right at FAU.
He's a good coach in a strong area. He picked that job when there were other ones out there, so he obviously saw some potential there. And as you mentioned, there's been a lot of other names that have rolled through Boca Raton. So, he should be able to feast on Florida and Southeast athletes. He's a good coach, but his personality did get in the way. He was a little bit too abrasive and just a little bit too immature for it, and that cost him ultimately. And we'll see if he can find his way back to the mountaintop. But he had a little bit of an exodus, got to repair, got to change his look and probably realize some things. And clearly they, feel like he's ready to get back in the game. So here he is. And I think that's a dude that, has a little bit of success quickly and maybe shows off that he is a little bit more grown up, then he could find himself back in the Big 12 type ranks sooner rather than later.
I think it'll be healthy to see how he does away from where he is protected at the University of Texas as far as because of who he was, the GA and all of that stuff, and get away from me. I think sometimes he's just an asshole.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. That's just kind of what he was, and And I don't remember, we had him on when he was at Houston, and even was kind of brash even then when some of the things were out there. He is a football coach, and he's pretty good at it. So maybe getting away, far away, in a place where he can kind of do his own thing and not just get caught up in maybe even in himself.
Here's what I hope he learned in his 2 years away from Texas, that the running back is a guy that the quarterback can turn around and hand the ball off to sometimes. Mm-hmm. And sometimes that guy is a better runner, and most of the time it should be this case, is better at running the football than your quarterback.
Yeah.
Sometimes not, but most of the time, historically throughout football, the running back is a better runner than the quarterback because it's in the name. Just going to throw that out there.
But
for
you think
the
that's going to
Mensa guy.
change?
No, I don't. I hope he did learn it, but I don't think he's, but sometimes, a name means something. Mensa guys should know that. Number 1, Hugh Freeze at Auburn. Now, look, he's already had a mini reboot at Liberty, but that is also a school that administratively and athletic director-wise Ian McCall went there to reboot his career, after he left here. The school as a whole, really, for the football coach, when it comes down to the ex-president, there really has no right to ask questions about things that you've done in your past off the field. So that was a good place for Hugh Freeze to be and show what a good football coach he still was. But I do think the SEC world needs to see him win at that level again and win at that level as ethically as he can. I don't.
The SEC needs to see that?
I mean.
What league? Are we talking about different leagues?
No, I mean, publicly ethically, I guess. I mean, faux ethically. I'm not trying to, pretend like all, everybody else is doing it pure as the driven snow. But Hugh Freeze in particular has a reputation of being two-faced. So he's got to prove that over the length of time at Auburn, which is a difficult place. We talked about it earlier in the show, to succeed, because the minute you make a mistake or things don't go as people think it should be, regardless of the reality of the situation, you've got too many cooks in the kitchen that want to make moves within that program. So this is tough, but he is trying to get a reboot, and we'll see how it works for him in Auburn.
I think that he fits right in, basically as is. I don't think he's had to show really much contrition. I don't think there's anybody wanting an apology. I think that Auburn saw, hey, football coach wins games, let's hire him. And that's what they did, and they got the guy that they wanted over the guy that apparently they really didn't like all that much for starters, and Chris Peterson. And Brian Harsin. That's a big move that they made. It obviously came with some backlash, but I don't for one second think that he's like some changed man or that he's learned really any lessons. I don't think that Hugh Freeze has. I don't know that to be sure, but just nothing regarding his behavior while at Liberty made me go like, you know what? I think that guy's a changed person. I think he's who he was when he left the first time around, and they're just hoping that he is that in the way that he won football games, because that's really all that matters. And just, don't screw up too badly, win football games, and you'll have a deal for life. I think that's basically the message that was sent, and that's basically the message that will be delivered. And he is a good football coach. To what extent, we'll find out. But what an opportunity for Freeze and Auburn. They see the success around them. They see Georgia where they are now, and they see Bama still doing their thing, and they want to get a bite back out of that as well, like they did a few years ago. So I won't say that like they sold their soul, but I don't think that they went and did a tremendous amount of due diligence and really like played the morals card all that much. I think they saw a guy who wins football games, and when things go wrong, he can call on his relationship to Christ, and they just hope that he wins football games and doesn't screw up too badly.
Look, personally, as a cynic, I believe probably the only thing that changed from Liberty to Auburn after Ole Miss was that now Hugh Freeze has a burner phone.
Yeah, exactly.
So.
I think that he wins football games, and it's like if we go all the way back to the start of the show, and I'm not saying this on like accusing Kendall Browse of anything, but like let's face it, they want to win football games. It's college sports. No one's ever really banished fully, except for one guy, and that's the father of the guy we started off talking about at the start of the show. Yep. But others have gotten chance after chance after chance in the wild world that is college athletics, and that's never going to change. So long as you say you're sorry well enough, then you'll get one. So long as you're a winner.
All right, thank you, Paul. Craig, thank you very much. Retired stockbroker.